Welcome to our Sound for Video session, Soundies, and hope you're having a good Sunday and had a good week. We have a couple of things that we want to talk about today, so let's go ahead and jump over into our agenda and we'll get started here. All right, so first up, a lot of questions about the Rode Wireless Go 2, little consumer grade 2.4 gigahertz wireless system with 2 transmitters and a single dual channel receiver, which is a pretty handy little setup. We did a review a few weeks back of the Blink 500 and Pro and the Hollyland Lark 150, similar type products, same kind of functionality. And so I'm still working on this. I'd hoped to publish it this morning, but there's a lot to test and we're still working through it. So we will have a sample of that for you here in just a minute, and then we'll have a full review here probably hopefully by next week. So that's the plan there. Next up after that, we do have a video question that was submitted this week. Thank you to Mr. Rob Christiansen. So we're gonna roll that and we'll talk about some things there. And then we have a variety of additional questions that were submitted, and then we'll come back to those. So let's first check out the Wireless Go 2, and give me just a second here. So Emma's going to have one channel. We're going to go ahead and power this on without, oh, it's still muted so you don't hear the clicking and popping and all that business. Go ahead and get this powered up. Is yours on over there, Emma?
Coming on as we speak.
It's coming on as we speak. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and switch over. Here we go. So I've got my transmitter right here. Okay, we should be on this now. Super quiet.
Yeah.
What's going on with that?
Don't know.
Checking standby. 1 second here. Let's just check and see what our levels are set at. Let's go to minus 21. Of course.
I'm not hearing much of yours at all. I can hear myself.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that.
Interesting.
So weird. So there's a problem. I mean, like this would be the normal distance right here, and we're peaking at minus 20 at best. We haven't run into this issue before. Go ahead and talk into yours, Emma.
Checkity check. Yeah. I can hear myself. Cannot hear you. That's really weird because it worked like 5 minutes ago.
5 minutes ago is good. I'm going to go ahead and restart my channel here, and let's just see if that makes any difference.
Okay.
It actually, on the receiver, it's showing gone. Okay.
Interesting.
Well, I just turned it off, so.
People are commenting on the noise floor, which is what I meant by fizzy fuzz.
Yeah.
As I told you earlier.
Is mine coming through any louder? No.
Nope. Ted, you are correct. Live demos. Something fun always happens.
Something fun always happens. So there's something to check out in the review. I don't know what's going on. It was fine yesterday on the distance test.
Yeah, it was fine yesterday. It was fine like
5 minutes ago.
5 minutes ago. Interesting.
You never can tell with these guys. Okay, well, there's your demo. That was kind of a horrible demo, to be honest.
Very roomy, says Rolf.
Yeah, it is. They're omnidirectional mics, and there's plenty of room here. So.
Yeah.
Okay, watch for the review. That'll be out in the next week or so, maybe a little bit longer, depending on how long it takes to do the final testing and to work out this issue now as well. So we're going to come off. Okay, back onto my other mic over here. All right. Well, all right. Well, we'll come back to that and see how that pans out. So let's go ahead and jump into, and let's go ahead and roll that and see what we got here.
Hi, Curtis. It's me, Rob, from Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies. Recently, Jim and I had a kind of out of left field, attaboy kind of validating experience. And it was one of those moments where it really kind of, for us, sort of pushed back our imposter syndrome for a bit and, really kind of made us feel we're on the right track. And my question for you is, have you, I can only assume you have. I'd love to hear one of your experiences where you had one of those moments of validation, of, one of those milestones where you went, I am on the right track, whether it be in videography or sound recording or sound mixing or developing your 2 successful YouTube channels. I would just love to hear that. I personally find those stories inspiring, and I'd love to hear one of yours. And I'm kind of assuming my fellow soundies would as well. It's one of those things we can draw some encouragement from. So yeah, that's my question. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Yeah, you do sound good on that mic. What mic is that you're using? Oh, we got to push our levels up. There we go. I was going to do a fancy fade. Software mixing, not my favorite. These faders. So we're back on the A10 Mini today, and actually, I'll talk about that in a minute, but we'll come back to that. But let me just talk about Rob's question here. I think that's fantastic. Congratulations on that sort of attaboy moment. And for those that are interested in hearing it, actually, Rob had emailed me earlier in the week and told me a little bit about what he's talking about there. In his live stream tonight, I believe, I hope I'm not overstepping any boundaries here, but I think, Rob, you mentioned that you might talk about it a little bit, what the experience was and kind of how that worked. I guess I can share a few things. Let me talk first about kind of my work as a corporate video shooter, and some of the things. I guess what happened was when I started at my current employer, I was a product manager. Well, actually, I was a business analyst first few years. I got back into photography. Actually, I'd done photography in the film days, and then once the DSLRs hit, I had digital little point and shoot cameras, but I was never that thrilled with them. But then when DSLRs came out, I got a Nikon D50, I think it was. That sounds right, yeah. So it wasn't video world. It wasn't doing video at that point. It was an APS-C size sensor. Got into that. Kind of became, at the company, there were a couple of us that did photography. My friend Mary also was a photographer, and so we kind of became the people that did the photography whenever the company needed some photography, headshots. We have annual customer conferences, so we kind of became the event photographers and so on and so forth. And then once we got DSLRs with video, Mary wasn't quite as interested in that, or whatever the case may have been, but I got a little bit more into that, especially since I had a little bit of background with sound, and we kind of brought those together, and then we started producing videos for the company as well. And so I think the one experience I can think of that was really kind of exciting for me from the standpoint, or kind of validating for me, just like you were talking about, Rob, was we had a little, our little company is actually a child company of a much bigger company at the time. And they had a video contest, and some of my friends at our little company put together a video. We entered it into the contest, and we did really well. Actually, we didn't win, but I think there was some gaming going on with the voting, because it was all voted by the employees and the other team that won, who had their video wasn't that great, but what they did in the video was good. Some of the people on their team did this. I don't even know what it's called, but if you go water skiing and you make pyramids of people while you're water skiing, whatever that's called. They did a video of that, and we had a much more kind of a creative narrative style piece we put together. But that was really validating. That was one. Another one more recently, and there are lots of these little experiences, but another one more recently was one where, for our last customer conference in 2019, in fact, I worked with a bunch of people at the company to put together just a little piece that was going to be shown at our customer conference. It was probably a 2.5 minute piece. But what was so cool about that and validating about that is that I was able to actually be in the huge convention room when they aired it, and I got to watch people watching it, and that is really interesting. So you can just see people's reactions to the piece that you put together. And that was really validating. Of course, the applause at the end, it was, so it resonated, and that was really good there. However, I think that what's important to keep in mind is that, and I don't mean to rain on the parade here, but and you know this already, but what's interesting too is that you will still have, we have had experiences too where we had at a previous customer conference, we put together a video and for whatever reason the AV just didn't work and it was a complete and utter flop. And it was embarrassing from the standpoint as well that the CEO had gotten up and said, we have some really talented people here at our business and they put together a video. And then he turns toward the screen and then for the next probably 2.5 minutes, the AV guy is trying to get it to play back and couldn't get it to play. And I think it had to do with the fact that they were using really ancient projectors and, whatever the case may have been. But you will have those kind of faceplant kind of experiences too. And we have those on the live stream all the time, as you guys well know that have been here before. So anyway, so those are some thoughts. And then as far as YouTube is concerned, that's an interesting one. And the thing that kind of brightens my day almost daily is that when I get the comments back on videos that we've produced and people say, wow, this was really helpful for me. And just getting those is very, very validating and helpful. Then, and in fact, usually those especially come on the tutorial videos as opposed to people get excited about gear reviews, as you well know. And in fact, gear reviews almost always get more views and more attention. But the videos I'm most proud of are the ones where we teach a concept and hopefully teach it in a way that works really well and that people get the concept and then they have gratitude from there. Those are the things that kind of are the most gratifying for me, certainly. And I don't know if I can point to a single instance of that, but you'll get them along the way. Another thing, and this is weird and twisted, but you'll also know that you're headed the right direction when you start attracting more trolls, believe it or not. And poor Emma and Danny have to hear me, read back. And sometimes I'm able to keep it in pretty good perspective, and other times not so much. But sometimes you'll get the really kind of even mean-spirited ones. I've had to block people from the channel just because some of the things they've said are just nasty. So you will actually, believe it or not, when you start getting more of that, you'll know that you are reaching a larger audience and you're doing something that's probably meaningful. So when those days come, hang in there. They will come and they'll be frustrating. And in some of those cases, the feedback is delivered in a really bad and mean kind of rough way, but they sometimes have good points. Sometimes they're expressing frustration with what I didn't deliver in the video. And that's okay too. Sometimes I can address that. Sometimes there are things I can improve. A lot of times there are things I can improve, in fact. But sometimes they're just delivered in a really mean way. And other times they're just really personal just because the people are cranky or unhappy or whatever the case may be. So there's that. All right. So thanks for that, Rob. Let's go ahead and jump into the other questions here. All right. First up from Josh. Give me just a second here. Recently, I got a Sony a7S III, and I'm using it with a MixPre 6 and into the Ninja 5. I noticed that the sound recorded on the Ninja is completely unusable. I've been recording separately into the MixPre, but having to sync that in post takes time. I would rather just be able to take the audio and video together from the Ninja. Is there something I'm doing wrong? Can you go through the settings I would have to get right in the camera, the Ninja, and the sound recorder? By the way, I'm using a Sennheiser Lav and an MKH 416 into the MixPre. Okay, Josh, so there are a lot of things there. I don't know what you're doing right now currently, but we need to know a little more information. I don't know why you're getting horrible sound in the Ninja right now. Typically, if you're getting horrible sound, I don't know if you're feeding audio out of the MixPre into the camera, and then the camera's carrying that forward to the Ninja, or I just need more details there. So Josh, if you wouldn't mind emailing me back. I don't have a Ninja 5 here or a Sony a7S III, but the main idea is that if I understand correctly, the a7S III, as far as I'm aware, does not have a switchable input, so you can't choose whether it's mic level or line level, so it's going to be mic level, which means that to get the audio out of the MixPre into the Sony, you're going to need to attenuate the output level. So in the MixPre course, if you haven't taken that already, there's a very clear video, I hope, on how to calibrate the levels from the MixPre and the Sony or any other sort of mirrorless camera. So there's a little process that you send tone from the camera or from the MixPre into the camera, and then you adjust the the output level on the mix pre until the meters on both of them are at the same level. That way, then the Sony a7S III will carry that audio forward to the Ninja 5, and you should be in pretty good shape. Now, that does mean that you're going to be using the analog to digital converter in the Sony, and I don't know, I would assume Sony has pretty decent preamps by now. For those of you that shoot Sonys, you can probably speak to that here in the chat. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is you can send the audio directly from the mix pre into the Ninja 5. Again, I don't have a Ninja 5 here, but what you'd want to do is on the Ninja 5, you'd want to set the input to line level and then do the same process where you send tone from the mix pre and adjust the output until the meters are at the same place on both the mix pre and the Ninja. So again, if you want to send me more details, we can talk through it. Again, the mix pre course has a segment that covers this specifically. It doesn't cover the settings you would use in the Ninja 5, but again, you set that to line level. If you have that option, set it to line level. If you don't, then you treat it just like a camera where you would send the audio out and use the tone to calibrate the level. So I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point. It's probably not helpful. I'm probably 99% sure that the Ninja 5 does have the ability to switch to line level. So, okay. Okay, switching on to the next question. Next up from Jimmy. When using a dynamic handheld mic on an outdoor for a Vox Pop interview, does the mic preamp like the SE Electronics DM1 Dynamite or the Clark Technic Mic Booster CT1 help reduce the background noise? Can't get my head around what will happen after the 20 dB plus of gain from the mic preamp and lower the gain level on the mixer will do to the ambient noise. Okay, Jimmy, that's not going to solve ambient noise issues. That's going to solve issues with weak preamplifiers that are having a hard time providing enough amplification for your microphone. So no, it's not going to help with ambient noise. With ambient noise, you need to use directional microphones and microphone technique to solve that problem. So I would, I don't know which microphones you're using. Sounds like a handheld mic. Most handheld mics, I don't know which one you're using, but a lot of them have cardioid polar patterns. So the best way to improve or to manage ambient noise is to get that microphone close to the sound source. So, if you are doing an interview, maybe you can have two, one for you and one for the interviewee, possibly. Have people hold it up nice and close. By close, I mean like this. That's going to get you the best signal to noise ratio. So your voice and not as much ambience. So that's probably the best way to do it in terms of managing ambience. But these inline mic preamps are not going to solve that problem for you at all. All right, next question from Jimmy. Thanks for that. I use the MixPre's noise assist on almost every interview recording, for I always record in an untreated environment next to a bunch of computers, AC that cannot turn off, fridges, etc. in a lab. With lavalier on the interviewee, I can never set noise assist for more than -5 dB without coloring the voice, unlike Mr. Paul Isaac's demo video in his office of the noise assist that goes up to -10 and more still and gets a good sounding voice. I assume it's because of the hardware difference. Well, no, I don't think he's using different hardware, maybe, but I once heard you mention the closest the person's voice to the mic, the better the noise assist works and cuts out the ambient noise. Could you elaborate more on the principles of how noise assist works and the difference between noise assist and Cedar SDNX? Okay. So if you use those handheld mics, like I'm talking before, it's always going to be more challenging with an omnidirectional lavalier microphone. Those are always going to struggle. And that's about what I found too, is if you go beyond -5 dB on noise assist, that's when things start getting really weird with a lavalier microphone. Totally understood. If you get up close on a directional handheld microphone, you're going to be able to push that farther, like Paul Isaacs did. So that's what I found with the with noise assist, is that if you can close mic, then you can get much better results. If you are using what we more traditionally use in video with mics that are farther away, or lavalier microphones, I find generally I even started hearing it on -4 dB and -5 dB definitely. So that's just the reality of that situation. So if you can go to handheld cardioid dynamic microphones, you could probably push that a little bit farther. I have not used Cedar SDNX, so I don't know about that one. It uses a different algorithm. Sound Devices has licensed it now for their higher end recorders, so the 8 series can now run it. It's It's pretty expensive. But Cedar DNX, or DN, I think it used to be called, they have their own product. It's like a standalone box that does noise reduction. I think it's a Cedar DNS, standing for denoise, not DNX. So that one has been around for a long time. I think it was about $1,500 per channel, roughly, or maybe it was a little bit more than that. But it uses a different algorithm. Same thing I think applies. If the closer you can mic and the more directional your mic, the better the results are going to be generally. But anyway, it's just like in the 8 series recorders, there's the Sound Devices Mix Assist, which is a auto mix algorithm, and there's also Dugan auto mixing. So they're both there, and they both work a little bit differently. And I imagine the same is true of the Cedar SDNS as well. So, okay. Next question from Jimmy as well. Jimmy had a lot of questions. Finally, I understand the high amount of low cut filter or noise assist or both at the same time will cut down the lower frequency considerably. Will a bassier mic, for example, the 416 NTG3 or even the NTG5 in particular, thinking of the NTG5 for my next purchase, help regain some of those low frequencies lost? I'm using the NTG4 right now. Well, those are definitely bassier than the NTG4, all of those that you listed. I think the one that I would consider the bassiest is probably the NTG3 in my experience. But I think that it's mainly the low-cut filter that's pulling out the bass. I don't know that noise assist necessarily does on its own. I think it's more a low-cut filter that's cutting out the bass. But yeah, if you use a bassier microphone and then use a high-pass filter or a low-cut filter, as you call it here, which are the same thing, then yeah, it'll be a more even sound probably. I'd probably look at the NTG3 though. I didn't find the NTG5 to be particularly bassy. I found it to be a lot more even and a lot more kind of natural sounding. So, all right. Thanks for those, Jimmy. Next up from Camille. I have a question about mix minus regarding the A10 Mini Pro Extreme. When multiple guests are on a stream, they cannot listen to the broadcast due to the delay in audio. One solution is a separate Zoom session in the background for the active participants. Is this the best workaround, or is there another solution for this? For example, by using the mix pre, mix minus. Is it to be expected that Blackmagic will come up with a solution for this in a possible software update, Stream Bridge, new product? Thanks in advance. Well, yeah, so Camille, that's typically called a back channel. And yeah, it's pretty critical at this point that you use something like Zoom or some other online service for the participants to be able to hear each other, because it's not very practical to listen to the actual stream itself, for example, on YouTube or wherever you're streaming to. There's usually so much latency that it's not practical. So almost always everyone that I know is using a back channel of some sort, usually Zoom or another service like it. The mix pre, mix minus on its own, no, that I don't. The mix pre would need to have some way to connect with everyone else, so it would still be back to Zoom or whatever. Will Blackmagic come up with a solution for this in a possible software update? I don't see a way, unless they make their own online calling service, or maybe there's something clever they're working on. I don't know, but there'd have to be some sort of service like Zoom. There could be something via a streaming bridge, but again, that's going to take up. I don't know, but I think it's pretty standard. Let me just say this to help you out, Camille. It is pretty standard for there to be a back channel like a Zoom call in today's world. I think we'll see some advancements at some point, especially as high bandwidth connections become more and more common for people. I have a 200 megabit connection here, and what I find is that when I do the types of interview streams where I actually have the other person connect to me, and we've done that a few times, like with Ecamm Live has that feature. The problem is even with my 200 megabits, even though theoretically I have plenty of bandwidth, we almost always run into problems. And I don't know if it's on our end or the other end, but there's still some challenges there. So I actually find that the online services are nice because what happens is everyone calls to a central cloud destination or server somewhere. And so you're not relying on any one person's connection to get all of the inbound traffic and also be streaming out at the same time. My friend Photo Joseph actually did a multi-person live stream a while back with multiple streaming bridges and Zoom calls, and they were streaming to multiple channels, and they were running into problems there as well. So anyway, I think it's probably, my experience has been that Zoom, if you are going to do it, if you are going to use a streaming bridge and not go to a service like StreamYard or Riverside.fm or one of those, then using something like a Zoom back channel is going to be critical. So, all right, let's go to the next question. Wait, we have a question here. What are you referring to when you say that the mic sounds aggressive? We will come back to that. Hold on to that thought. Hold on to that chat question there, Emma, for us. Okay. A couple more questions here, and then we'll get to those in the chat here. Tech Deep. So this is from Andres. So let me give you a background. Andres took the production sound fundamentals course, and he's in the process of kind of deciding which recorder and mixer to go with for his work. So he has a variety of questions that come along with that. He's asking for a tech deep dive on signal chain. If I use the audio recorder, for example, a Tascam or a Zoom, as input for the microphones on a live streaming event and go from there into the ATEM Mini with a line-in signal, would I bypass the preamp in the ATEM, or is that still in the loop? With other words, does switching the input from mic to line in the ATEM control tell the ATEM Mini to bypass the preamp? So, yeah, let me talk about that. Yes, in theory it does. The reality is in some of the lower end products, lower cost products, is that sometimes what the manufacturers do is instead of actually bypassing the preamp, they pad and still send the signal through the preamp, which is a weird way to do it. So you're going to see that more likely on the lower end products. I think, for example, I don't know if this is true, but I would guess that possibly the Tascam DR60D is doing that. I don't know with the ATEM if it's doing that or not. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that, but I don't know for sure. On the higher end gear, yes, they definitely take the preamp out of the signal chain, and the audio is routed around it and goes straight to the analog to digital converter. So really just depends on the device. So good question. He has a follow-on to that. Even better if I could use the analog to digital converter from the recorder, not from the ATEM, but I do not see any way to do that with the ATEM Mini. Is that something on higher end devices, or is that not at all used because of other reasons? Okay, this question is just for my curiosity and thinking of the perfect signal chain. I do not have any plans to use it, so if you don't know the answer to it, don't waste your time. Well, I do actually have an answer to that. So you can bypass the ATEM Mini's preamps altogether. So if you run the audio through your camera, then you'd be using the camera's circuitry instead. You can actually bypass in some cases with higher end cameras. So to answer your question, yes, it's generally higher end gear. You can bypass even the camera's preamplifiers altogether by going line level in. And then there are even some cameras beyond that. For example, my Canon C200, where you can switch the input to AES digital. So it's just taking, if your mixer that you're using can deliver an AES digital signal, and my Sound Devices 888 can, my SQ5 can, then you can just actually have the mixer do everything. It's preamplifying the signal, amplifying it up, it's converting it to digital, then it sends the digital to the camera, and the camera just combines that with the video signal and sends it on to the ATEM. So there are ways to do that, but yes, it's generally going to be the higher end gear. It's not going to be the $200 Tascams that do that for you. Okay, that was a fine question. And in fact, let me just talk about today's signal chain just so you know what's going on. So I've got a microphone here. This is an Earthworks SR314. That is going into an analog preamplifier, my Neve Shelford channel. That's coming out line level into my Canon C70. Is that what it's called? Okay. Canon C70. And then what's happening there is that it is set to line level on the camera. So we bypass the preamps, and then the Canon's converters takes that line level signal and convert it to digital. So we are still relying on the analog to digital converter in the camera, and then that's all sent via HDMI to the ATEM Mini here. So that's what we're looking at today, just to give you a sense. And this is what it sounds like. So, all right, back to Andrea's questions here. So he's looking at a couple of different recorders. One of them that went back and forth was a Zoom F4. And I told him, well, the problem with the Zoom F4, the only problem with the Zoom F4 from my perspective, or the biggest problem, is that Zoom is not making it anymore. So whatever one you buy, even if you buy it new, that's kind of just the remaining stock. And Once those are gone, they're gone, and they're not going to make any more from what they've told me. All right, so now Andreas is checking on the DR70D from Tascam, the Zoom F6, and the MixPre 3.2. As you confirmed, the DR70D can't be used as a mic on the computer, that is to say, as an audio interface, which could make some voiceover processes a lot easier. On the other hand, I like the direct button for the slate, which I think is very handy, and I didn't see it on the other recorders. Let me pause there and talk about that. Both the F6 and the MixPre 3.2 have a slate function. It's easier to get to on the MixPre. You can actually... Does the MixPre have a star button? I don't think it does, actually. No, it doesn't. It does. They both have a slate, but you have to jump into the menus to use them. You have to move up to the bigger MixPre, where you have a star button. You could assign that star button to trigger the slate. On the F6, I think the only way to do the slate is actually to go into the output menu and trigger it there. I may be wrong on that, but I don't think there certainly wasn't a button right on the front to do it. And yeah, so you're right. On the Tascam DR70, there is a dedicated button or switch, I can't remember which, to do slate. So depends on if slate's really important to you, then yes, that's where the DR70 has an advantage. However, Andreas goes on to say, the other thing I'm not sure about is the output level of the F6 and the MixPre. As you showed in one of the lessons, you just managed to align the output of the MixPre minus 40 dB with the mic of the Panasonic. Do you know if the F6 can be turned down to minus 40 as well, minus 40 dB as well, and will that work with a Sony a7 III? So this is a good question, and I'm glad you asked this ahead of time. The F6 actually has an issue with its output. When you attenuate the level on its output, it gets very, very noisy, and from my point of view, unusable. So there are some workarounds. You can use an attenuation cable to reduce the output level. That's a less than ideal solution, but it works, and you get a pretty decent signal that way. Some other people use the headphone output. I wouldn't recommend that. The headphone output on the F6 is a little bit noisy, so that wouldn't be recommended, but that's good to know, and it's a good question to ask up front, because that would not, if that is your workflow, I would not recommend, F6 would not be my first recommendation, period. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay. He has one more question. And one thing he did not see in the video so far, if you use the headphone on a recorder, can I listen to each single channel or only the main master out? The first should be possible, but was not mentioned in the videos. Yes, it is possible on some recorders. I don't know that the Tascams do it, but once you get up into the Zoom F6 and the MixPre, those both have headphone routing, and so you can... And you also have channel menus where you can jump in and basically do what's the equivalent of a pre-fader listen, which you would have on a mixing board. So basically that means, yes, you can mute all the other channels except for the one you want to listen to. What's more on the F6 and the MixPre series, you can also, and this actually applies to the F4, F8, F8N as well, is you can set up headphone presets. So you can actually dial in exactly what you want to hear. For example, if you want to hear the boom mic in one ear, and all of your lav mics in another ear, you can do that. Or if you're doing a two-person interview and you want to hear one person's mic in one ear and one in the other ear, you can do that. So you have a lot of flexibility there as well. Okay. And I think that's all those questions. Go ahead and pull that chat question back up for us, Emma, if you would. There was a question here. We're going to go back and find it. And if you guys have any other questions, if you could just, when you put it in the chat, just put @CurtisJuddAudio. That'll make it a little easier for us to find. All right. All right, from Danny. What are you referring to when you say a mic sounds aggressive? Well, that's a good question. I think a lot of times it sounds something like this. Really, it sounds like the mic is right on, the person is right on the mic. I feel like for example, the one mic that I've described that way before is a Sennheiser MKH50. It has a little bit of an aggressive sound to it, I would say. And I think it works. I mean, it's a fine sound. It's not a bad sound. It just sounds a little bit more in your face. That's what I usually refer to, or what I'm referring to when I say that. So, okay. Any other questions in the chat? Let's go. All right. McFinn. Mixpre 3, I cannot get phantom power on any of the 3 channels. My phantom window is half gray. Can you guide me to resetting to basic and all 3 channels? Thank you. Well, you might want to do a factory reset first of all. That's one way to get back. But what that sounds like is that the I don't have my overhead camera on. Let me grab the Mixpre. You have to make sure that you have enabled that microphone input first. So if phantom power is grayed out, most likely you have it set to an input type that cannot use phantom power. So if I go, and this is going to be wonky. Give me just a second here. Okay, so if I go into the menus, let's see if we can get that to focus. The problem is oh, there it is. Okay, so see how right now for the input we have none selected or off. The input was set to off. I'm going to go ahead and change that to mic. Now when I change it to mic, you will see that the phantom power button is now available. Once it figures out how to focus, there it goes. Now it's lost the focus again. We're fighting because we're using face detection here. But the idea here is, McFinn, I think you need to make sure that input is set to mic, and then you should have the phantom power option available to you. Okay. If you don't have those options, you might be in basic mode. Let me just switch to basic mode and see what it looks like in that case. Let's go back to basic mode. Okay. When I go in, yeah, you still have a mic input. Same thing. You'd have to change the input to mic, and then the phantom power button should become available to you. So same thing there. Go ahead and switch it back to advanced here so I don't trip myself up, because that's usually how I use it. All right. Hope that helps, McFinn. Happy recording. Okay, Ted, any tips for someone wanting to do live sessions like this one of yours who will be flying solo? No Emma to help. I've ordered an A10 Mini Pro. If you don't have an Emma, then yeah, you do a lot of testing beforehand and be ready to troubleshoot on the spot, because you saw earlier in the stream here, we had problems with those Rode Wireless Go's. If I was relying on those, this would have been a really short stream and a really ugly one. No, I used to do all of my live streams solo. You just have to, it's a little bit slower paced. Your audience is going to have to wait while you do certain things. And actually, we even still with both of us here, we still take a little bit of time. So you saw, for example, when we rolled Rob's video, there was still a little delay there while I got things set up and running on my end here, and Emma switched over to the HyperDeck to play it back. So practice, practice, practice. Do some dry runs that are private, and you'll get a good feel for things. So happy streaming, Ted. I think you'll do fine. Okay, Jose, looking into streaming podcasting using the Zoom F8N, can I route certain apps to different channels in order to separate the system audio to be recorded, i.e. music from iTunes to be recorded to channel 4? To some extent you can, yes. So you can route USB streams back from your computer into the F8N, yes. But I'd need more details. I mean, it's a little trickier if you're going to do multiple apps back to the F8N. That's where you're going to have to do some kind of more fancy routing on your computer. And that's not so much the F8N, because I think the F8N in multi-track mode can take 4 USB streams from your computer. So you're going to have a way on your computer to separate those streams. So, for example, if you want to do one, well, and that's the thing too, is that, for example, so you're probably on a Mac if you're running iTunes, I would guess. But so you're probably going to want stereo. So you're going to want to use 2 of those streams back for iTunes, and then another 2 for another app. You might be able to use something like Audio Hijack to do something like that. I haven't done a lot of work with that, but that's what I would look into, is Audio Hijack. So I don't think the limitation on the F8N is that you get 4 streams back via USB. I think it's 4. F8N, need a battery. Battery. Power cable. Let's get this guy powered up here. On the F8N, it has a USB micro connector, or no, sorry, mini. It's not even micro. It's mini. Give me a second to get one of those. Here's one. We're going to connect this to our Mac here. Okay, USB into there. USB into the computer, power on. All right, here we go. I just want to confirm that we're getting that it is 4 streams. I'm almost positive it is, but just need to check that. So I'm going to go into menu, into USB. We're going to go into audio interface mode, multi-track. Now I'm going to come onto my computer here, and I'm going to go open the audio MIDI setup. And this shows here, we have the H&F series multi-track USB audio. Right now, so for output, yes, you get 4 streams, 4 USB streams. So you would need to do some routing with something like Audio Hijack to split those up and get those back into your F8N. You can use 4 channels there to record those. So I think the answer is yes, Jose. Okay, cool. Let me just pop that out. Okay. I've always been curious. Is it Ono Coffee? I hope I pronounced that right. Have any of you guys used the AV Matrix HVS0402U? Wondering how it compares to the ATEM Mini Pro. I have not used it. I don't know if anyone else here has. But yeah, leave it in the chat if you have. Okay. C70, no more C200. Well, the C200 is sitting over there. The C70 is this is our second time using it as our streaming camera, actually. What do you think? It's working okay? Sound okay? Visuals okay? Seem to be okay. Focus is working good, except for when you want to focus on something that's not a face. All right, let's keep going here. Storytellers Pro. Hi, I normalize, for example, compress and limit to -3 dB, a dialog file in Audition's waveform editor. After I bring the file into Final Cut Pro 10, the level is much lower, around -10 dB. Why? Good question. I don't know why, but I have found that Final Cut's meters are a little bit funky. What's interesting to me is that sometimes I do that exact same process when I bring the audio and then I convert a mono dialogue track to dual mono. I bring it into Final Cut Pro 10. It shows it as all clipping when in fact it's not clipping. So it shows a bunch of red peaks in the waveform as if it's, in a really bad position. But other times I will bring a dual mono normalized audio track into Final Cut Pro 10, and it will only be in the yellow. It won't be in the red at all. And it's normalized to the exact same level, so -17 roughly with a -1.5 dB true peak headroom. So I think it's a Final Cut Pro issue to answer your question. It doesn't seem to affect the overall audio, just as the waveforms and the meters look wrong. Another reason why I don't love mixing and don't like mixing and don't mix in Final Cut Pro 10. So, all right. Oh no, Coffee's got questions today. Have you got hold of the wireless Go-To? Yes, and it was a complete disaster on the live stream here, but in our other tests, it's actually been pretty good, so I don't know what's going on there. We're going to have to do a little more troubleshooting. They say it will export the audio in 32-bit float, but the description seems confusing to me. Thoughts? Yes, I can talk about that. The Rode Wireless Go-To is not a wide dynamic range recording capable wireless system. Like, for example, the Zoom F6, the MixPre 2 series, or even the Zoom F2 or the Tentacle Sync Track E. This is not the same thing. I contacted Rode, I asked them specifically about that. They confirmed that the Rode Wireless Go-To is transmitting from its transmitters, which do not have multiple analog to digital converters, which is typically something you need for that wide dynamic range recording. These do not have that. They send a 24-bit 48 kilohertz stream from the transmitter to the receiver, and also what they record on here is recorded in 24-bit 48 kilohertz. So when you download that, you can download a 32-bit float version of the file, but all it's doing is it's taking that 24-bit 48 kilohertz stream that's recorded in here and putting it in a 32-bit float space and container. So that's all it's doing. So it's not wide dynamic range recording, just so that you're 100% clear on that. I really am a little bit frustrated that companies, the manufacturers that have that technology, are referring to it as 32-bit float. I wish they didn't do that, because that's a really bad description for what's going on there, because it's really only describing a small portion of the overall technology that's needed to accomplish wide dynamic range recording. So what Rode's doing is, technically, yeah, it is a 32-bit float file, but it's a 24-bit 48 kilohertz recording that is being placed within that addressing space of 32-bit float. So it's not a wide dynamic range recorder. So, okay. Hopefully I didn't beat that to death. Okay, I've been using the MKH50 and the DPA 4060 in interviews, but I always choose the DPA 4060 instead of the MKH50. What do I wrong? Because everyone says the MKH50 is best. Well, I don't know. We need to hear it. But if you're in a noisy space or a roomy room, room with a lot of reverberation, then a lot of times the lavalier microphone will not pick up quite as much of that, because it's closer and because it effectively has it becomes somewhat directional because you have a human blocking the sound from behind. So that's not unusual. I find that a lot of times too. So that I wouldn't sweat it. I mean, if the idea is that you have those options, and so choose the better option, and that's totally fine. It could be, I don't know where you're placing the MKH50. If it's too far away, it's definitely gonna pick up more room. And I assume that that's the problem. That's what I found is typically, if I'm working in a reverberant space or there's a fair bit of ambient noise, a lot of times I will find a lav is just a little bit cleaner. So I'll go with the lav. I prefer the boom mic if I can, because it always sounds more natural to me. I've never found a lav mic to sound more natural generally than a boom mic that's placed well and working with a good, preamplifier behind it. But just do whatever sounds best and don't sweat it. If you want to send me a sample, I'm happy to hear, have a listen to it and see what we can kind of figure out about that. All right, Ralph, would you recommend software, noise assist, or hardware cedar for noise suppression? If you have to split signals, are you using passive splitters for those in professional setups? I assume is what prof means. At this point, they're both, they're kind of a software-hardware hybrid solution for both noise assist and cedar. Noise assist, that's the plug-in within the MixPre and the Sound Devices 8 series, and then cedar, they have the hardware solution, which is standalone, and they also have the plug-in for the 8 series. What do I recommend? If I'm doing something live, I wouldn't hesitate to use noise assist if we're working in a really noisy space, and I've done everything else I can to reduce the ambient noise. Microphone placement, microphone type. If I have to put up sound blankets, whatever I can do first, I do that. And then I use noise assist as a last kind of resort for live situations. But if I'm doing something that's going to recording and is going to have a post-processing, I might use noise assist on the mix, but I wouldn't use it on anything else. I wouldn't use it on an ISO channel for sure. So I wouldn't do that whether it's hardware or software personally. I think those are probably most useful in live situations, and I haven't used cedar, so I can't really speak to that. Noise assist, I felt like with a boom mic, you could probably use 3 dB of attenuation, which was helpful and useful. Once you got much beyond that, maybe 4, I felt like with most boom mics, you were going to start to get some artifacting, and so I wouldn't go a lot beyond that. So those are some of my thoughts on that. All right. Next up. Hey, thanks, Josh. Appreciate that. Thanks to everyone who's contributed here. Those are all going to Emma's university fund so she can learn how to become a music producer. All right, what else have we got in the chat there? And how are we doing on time? We got 10 more minutes. We're good. We're doing good today.
This is about the Mix Pre 3.
Where is the factory reset? I believe that's in the system menu, McFinn. But I wouldn't necessarily jump there first. Go ahead and make sure that you follow the other directions first. But if that doesn't pan out, it is in the system menu. No, where is it? I don't know off the top of my head. I'm probably not the expert you were hoping for. I apologize for that. I'd have to look it up, but if you look in the documentation, just do a search for factory reset or reset. But again, if I take that back. I wouldn't jump to a factory reset. What I said in the first time when we were talking about this, I just kind of blurted that out, and I actually have regrets saying that now. I would definitely go into the channel menu first and make sure you have mic selected. If mic is selected and you're still not getting phantom power, that's weird. Let me just do a quick check here. Oh. Another thing. So I upgraded to Mac OS Big Sur this week. That was exciting. I wouldn't recommend it if you have to get things done or you don't have a day to dedicate to the process, but now it's done. So I'm moving on and we're going to get better. But I just realized I don't have my folder of documentation there that I used to have. So I'm going to the Sound Devices website, to the support home. I'm going to view downloads. I'm going to choose the Mix Pre 3.2, view documents. I'm going to download the user guide. And now I'm going to do a search for reset. That's presets. I don't want presets. How about factory? There's factory. That's about the limiter settings. What is this? You can also restore the Mix Pre 2 to the factory default settings from the presets menu. So yeah, if you go into the presets menu, McFinn, you should be able to find the factory default there. Okay, moving on.
This is about the F8N and splitting computer audio to record it.
Okay, back to the F8N is 4 streams, but I'm using Windows and not sure how to reroute them for each app. I can use a Mac too. Well, I don't know. I'm not as familiar with the Windows side because I just don't use Windows that much. I use it to do email for work, and that's about it. Everything else I do on a Mac. So on the Mac or on the Windows, there should be something, and someone will probably put this in the chat. But on the Mac side, it's called Audio Hijack. It's probably the most popular internal audio routing app you can buy. There's probably something equivalent for Windows as well. Would you recommend I get a new Mix Pre 6 or a pre-owned 722? From Zach. Well, Zach, the 722 is pretty old at this point. It's a great recorder, fantastic recorder. In fact, I was just talking to my friend Watson Wu yesterday, and he's looking at getting some new recording gear, and he has been using a 744 and a 788 for years, and he still loves them. And he also had I think it was a 442 preamp mixer that he put in front of it sometimes. He likes the analog limiter in the 442, and he went to go get it serviced, and I guess his impression was that Sound Devices isn't as keen on kind of maintaining those at this point and doing factory service on them because there aren't nearly as many of them available out now, and they have newer products. So I would expect Sound Devices to continue to support them, but I wouldn't expect it to be cheap if you do have to have some sort of factory work done on them. So I would probably, I don't know what you're doing exactly, Zach, but the Mix Pre is Yeah, I guess I'd need to know more about what you're doing, but I would probably go for a mix pre 6.2 myself, unless you're doing something specialized and you have the appetite for expensive repairs when they become necessary. That's my thought. Okay. Donald. And by the way, let me just be really clear here. I got a comment this week, actually speaking back to Rob's question. Somebody left a comment basically saying that an answer I'd given on a question and answer session was just totally wrong. Could not have been more wrong. These are opinions. A lot of these I think are opinions. So that's my opinion on the mixed pre 6 versus the 722. There are others that would probably say go 722. So get multiple opinions. Mine is not the ultimate authority. So just want to say that as well. All right. Donald says, shooting on a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K, a Zoom F6, we boom, and an older Sennheiser G2 or G3 XSWD lavs. I'd like another budget set of lavs. What would you suggest we look for that fits a budget-minded filmmaker? Well, do you want to go digital or do you want to stay with UHF? So the G2 and G3 are UHF systems. And the good thing about those is that if you get yourself into a situation where you choose a frequency and that's not working, you can switch to another frequency. So you don't have to call the whole shoot off. And I don't know what level you're working at here. Is this just, personal projects, or is this for pay? If it's for pay, I generally would go with a UHF system. So that's going to be a Sennheiser G2, G3, G4. Sony has some as well. There's some lower cost ones from Saramonic. I haven't had a great experience with those yet. Some others have had a good experience, so it really depends. But I would stick with UHF if you're doing anything for pay. If it's just for fun, and if you have to scrap a shoot because it's just not working, then Wireless Go 2 has been awesome until today, for whatever reason, until we got on the live stream. So I don't know what my recommendation is going to be after we do the review, but up until then, it was quite good. We also reviewed the Hollyland Lark 150 and the Saramonic Blink 500 Pro a couple weeks ago over on my main channel. You can take a look at that if that might fit your needs as well. And you could get 2 channels into the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K that way. So those are some of my thoughts on that. Graham, could I use a Saramonic Blink 500 to transmit audio to my B cam from the MixPre 3 Mark II stereo out for audio sync in post, or would latency be an issue? Cheaper than tentacles. You could. I don't know I didn't specifically test the latency on the Blink 500, so I'm not sure what it's like on that. Interestingly, on the Rode Wireless Go 2 there and the original Rode Wireless Go, was 6 milliseconds, which I think would be sufficient. That would be close enough. Wireless Go 2, they're speccing at less than 5 milliseconds, so that would probably be okay. I don't know if anyone knows offhand what the latency is on the Blink 500. I don't know are you talking Blink 500 Pro or Blink 500, the original? And I don't know off the hand what either of those are, but if anyone does know, if you'd share that in the chat, that would be awesome. If you've got it already, test it and see. Do a clap test. And bring it into a video editing app and see how far off it is. It's worth a test. Okay. All right. How do you post-process 32-bit files to make them sound good? Do you go manually and set every level, or do you use some limiter to all? Is it better to use 24 bits with limiters? Most 32-bit float recorders don't have limiters while you're recording, so that's the first thing. I don't know if you're referring to that, but oh, no, you're not. You're saying, okay, is it better just to use 24-bit with limiters? I almost always when I'm recording dialogue, I almost always just shoot 24-bit with limiters. I don't bother with 32-bit float because it's not necessary. And yeah, so that's my take on it. But I understand for other people, for example, especially videographers, they want the protection that 32-bit float offers, which is if you forget to set the gain right, it's still okay. So I guess if you're coming from that point of view. But yeah, you have to do some post-processing. That's the thing is with 32-bit float, you're taking the job that you would normally do during production and you're pushing it to post. So you're going to have to make those decisions in post. In fact, Watson and I were talking yesterday as well. He was talking about some cars that he's recorded, performance vehicles, where he said a lot of these, like a lot of the Porsches, like the street legal Porsches, or the ones that are more, I guess, more accessible. They're not the supercars, but the high performance production cars. He said a lot of them are super quiet until you really push them. And so one of the things he has to often record for video games is what he calls a ramp. And basically they have to go from 0 to 60 over a 20-second period. And he said the thing is so interesting is that if you do that as a 32-bit float recording and you pull that recording in, most playback systems, you're not going to be able to hear, if you set the levels to be appropriate for the part when he's really redlining, versus the part where they're just idling, you can't even hear the idle. There's just nothing there. So yeah, they're definitely doing some compression in post to bring them into a level where you can hear both the idle and the redline. So you will also have to do that with any 32-bit float recording, most 32-bit float recordings, even with dialogue. Okay. Ted, any incompatible software issues with the upgrade to Big Sur? No, well, I don't know what was happening. I have some RAID SSD drives, and I think those were the problem, the driver for that. So what happened was I did an upgrade in place from Catalina, and then the computer wouldn't boot. So I had to format the drive and do a clean install. Now it works. And what I found is I'm actually using some of the OWC SSD drives that are actually multiple SSD drives within the same enclosure. And they're super fast and super nice for video editing, but the soft RAID application is still in beta and it didn't seem to work in my case, at least when I did the upgrade. So interestingly, Big Sur appears to have a driver that will work with these RAID arrays without me doing anything, just stock install. So I haven't installed soft RAID yet and everything's working fine, except for I have a big exclamation point on the picture, the little icon of the RAID drive on my desktop. So that was the biggest issue I had. Other than that, everything else was fine. Okay, Emma says we're at time.
We have a request to close out trying these again.
Okay, so we want to try the Rode Wireless Go again. Okay, here we go, people. No promises. I'm going to plug it back in. I'm turning on the receiver. Is your transmitter on? You can go ahead and turn that on. We have a lot of RF going on here too, so it could be something with that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, now I go to the mixer. Go ahead and talk, Emma.
Checkity check. 1, 2, 3. You getting signal at all?
No.
Interesting. I can slightly hear myself, but I think it's on the Earthworks, not this.
Yeah, I think you're on the Earthworks. Oh, now. Wait, we just got that laugh.
Really?
Yeah, but my channel's still. Okay, we're going to switch over. Stand by.
There it is. The fizzy fuzz.
Okay, so for whatever reason, my channel is still really quiet, right?
Yeah. Do you want to talk into this one?
Yeah, let's switch. Sorry about the bump there.
Checkity check. Yeah, there's like nothing on this one at all.
Yeah, it's all coming in this one channel. So what does the receiver show? You know what? We might have a routing issue here. Stand by. We're going to do a little, we're going to do some dangerous things on the fly here. Mic 2. Okay.
Checkity check.
No, that's not it. Stand by. We're just experimenting here. I'm going to change that. I'm going to change this. Okay. So I'm getting signal on channel 2, which is coming out probably on your right speaker on the stream.
Nothing from this one.
Yeah, I don't know. For whatever reason, that one is just being difficult. Let's try pairing again. So turn that off.
Okay.
Turn it back on.
And back online.
Okay, it's looking like it's trying to pair. Okay, now talk.
Checkity check.
Nope, it's not pairing. That one's not pairing for some reason.
Interesting.
So there's our second test.
Soundspeeds was here, by the way.
Okay. Oh, Soundspeeds was here. Hello, Alan.
We should have a 15-hour live stream.
I'm not doing 15-hour live streams. Okay.
And somebody else said we needed Zip Fizz training.
I'm going to need some Zip Fizz training to make that work. So thanks, Alan. Good to see you, Alan. Thanks for coming by. All right, people, get out there, make some great sound again this week, and we'll talk to you again next week. Take care.